I'm Chris Erdman, and this is Made of More, the show where we go beyond business to uncover real stories that shape entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, we explore the pivotal moments, the adversity faced, the risks taken, and the resilience found along the way. This isn't just about what people have built, it's about who they've become. If you're ready for inspiration, practical insights, and stories that remind you that you too are made of more, you're in the right place. In this episode of Made of More, we sit down with Aditya Mehta, aka Adi, a calm, calculated entrepreneur who's chosen a different path. Born into India's most influential business communities, Adi launched his first venture at just 6 years old, painting flower pots to earn money for his own toys. From navigating U.S. immigration through investor visas, walking away from the tech grind at Amazon, Adi shares he's building a portfolio of boring businesses. Industries that may not be flashy, but are profitable, practical, and powerful. He's also the host of the podcast Diaspora and owner of PMI Arca Property Management. Welcome to the show, Adi.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks for taking this time today. So I just want to get into maybe some of your early beginnings before we get into the meat of everything. So you come from a prominent business community in India. How did that influence you and your family?
Yeah, I come from a community called the Gujarat. We're from the state of Gujarat. A lot of the most successful business houses, business people tend to be from our community.
Sure.
It's a community which has been seafaring and risk-taking. Thousands of years ago, the trade between India was mostly with East Africa, the Middle East, and Gujarat is a state on the western side of the country. All the different states on that part of the country are generally more entrepreneurial than say some other parts of the country, but Gujaratis are known for being an extra savvy about their businesses. So being from that community, a business comes more naturally to us, and because we are risk takers, the chances of success are also higher, I would guess. So for us, doing a job was never really an option. We always just kind of assume that we're going to have some business or the other. Even when we do have jobs, there's always this, you're always looking around for the next opportunity to do business. And the minute something presents itself, you'll go back into business. That's just how the temperament is.
Oh, wow. that sounds really interesting. We were talking just the other day, and, you said you told your mom that you wanted a toy, and then a lesson came from that. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I was probably 6 years old, and she said, why don't you earn the money for the toys versus just asking me for the money? And I said, okay, what would I do? And she said, well, my immediate requirement is these flower pots need painting. So for the princely sum of 20 rupees, which is about a quarter of $1, I would paint these flower pots. And I guess I did a few in my house, and then my grandfather lived down the street, so did a few for him as well. And that was just the first of many informal businesses that I've had in my lifetime.
Yeah.
The next one was at the age of 8, where I would write stories for people that they could use in their essays and exams and sell them for a couple of rupees each in the class. So, when you're in your exams, you have to come up with different types of stories as essays. And I would give them fodder for those things because I was creative and I liked writing. So that it just started from there, and then I've done more than my fair share of businesses since then.
That sounds really interesting. So in the household, definitely you had some influence by encouragement, and that's probably why you're really creative and resourceful.
I mean, my family doesn't have much of a writing talent, I would say. My brother, he's a stand-up comedian, so he definitely writes.
Okay.
But we have all been a family of doctors, teachers, educators, accountants, because my last name is an occupational last name. It means accountant. So we've had a lot of those in our family. I think the creativity is exhibited more in terms of your ability to look at business opportunities versus, writing or artistic creativity, so to speak.
Really interesting. And what about, so you had that influence through your household. What kind of influence in business did you have throughout early ages of school?
So my parents, they both run a large financial services company in India. My mom's always been a trailblazer in the Indian stock market. She was the first woman president of the Bombay Stock Exchange, which is, one of the world's preeminent exchanges, not just in that part of the world.
Wow.
And she has always been the managing director, and my dad's always been the chairman of the group. But for them, it was never an assumption that you will come and join the business the day you finish college. I went and worked somewhere else. I tried a couple of businesses of my own, and then ended up working with them. And I started in the field sales team. So I was going door to door selling mutual funds.
Sure.
And I did that for some time before I slowly got to rise up in the ranks of the business. So the atmosphere at home has always been one of business owners, people who have an abundance mindset, people who are, like we say in our business group, givers gain. So there have always been people who are givers first. Dinner table discussions were always the economy and politics. And, I don't ever remember us talking about other people or random things that most people talk about. It's always been some sort of intellectual conversations. That has provided that bearing from start.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a lot of different impacts there.
Yeah.
So what does your family think about your journey in business till today?
Yeah. So I had spent 7 years in the family business. I was leading one of the divisions. And then I kind of was getting stagnated. So I started my MBA program at the London Business School. And it was a global program. So the objective was 1 week every month, I will go to class in London or Dubai or Hong Kong. It's a global program. And then I'll come back and work for 3 weeks and implement those things in my business. But now I'd been in the family business for 7 years. My total work experience was 8 years. So I didn't know much outside of that world. And when I went for my orientation in London and I saw all these brilliant people there was an ex-astronaut. There was a Middle Eastern billionaire in our class. There's people who own venture capital funds, CMOs, CXOs. So it was like my imagination was stretched beyond what I had thought. I came back and I quit the family business. And my parents were like, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do now, but I know that I don't want to do this. So I'm going to figure my way out as the program proceeds. And then I transitioned to tech startups eventually. I think my mom took it personally to an extent. It was it's an Indian joint family. We live together, we commute together, we are in the same office building together. So it was a little bit fraught for a few days, I would say. But then obviously my parents have been big supporters of my decisions, and they've always supported me with whatever I wanted to do. There was never any pressure to do this or that. It was always just do it well, whatever you do. So if you want to be a barber, be the best barber you can be. Versus, no, you have to be a doctor and an engineer and so on and so forth.
Sure. Well, that's got to feel really nice, and
seems
like really great values to grow up in and experience and pass off to your family now.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, nice. You said that you're not interested in being a disruptor. And why is that?
It's a 1 in a million person who comes up with a Facebook or a Tesla or whatever, right? It may not be everybody's cup of tea to be a visionary entrepreneur. And I feel like in that quest to come up with that next $1 billion idea, people lose sight of a lot of $1 million ideas.
Sure.
Where the chance of success would have been much higher. So if I were to do, say, 10 businesses and they were all trying to be a $1 billion idea, I might be left with 0. But if I do 10 businesses which are $1 million ideas, I might be at 5 million at the end of it. And,
that's not bad.
That's not bad, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of my goal is there's so many opportunities to do things better than they're being done in a boring space.
In the boring space.
Because competence is not as common as you would think. Like common sense is not as common as you would think. So I've made it my mission to identify businesses where you can bring these higher competencies and higher efficiencies, and just by virtue of doing that job well, carve out your $1 million or $2 million of revenue at a healthy margin. And since you're not reinventing the wheel or coming up with some big innovation, you don't need that much capital. So design a new product or build a big team or whatever. It's already something that's proven to be done well. The market's big enough for one more $1 million company to come in and take their slice of the pie and go home and sleep peacefully. And you're not taking the stress that comes with the big venture capital investments. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that approach either. But I realized early on my temperament was not suited to that. So I'm combining opportunities I see around me with what my skill set is and what I'm good at. And if that can get me to be reasonably affluent, then, what's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that. You know, one thing I'd like to hear you talk about, and something I've noticed about you in the short time that I've gotten to know you, is like, I feel like Adi is somebody that really you've studied yourself,
Yeah.
and you really know
Yeah.
yourself. Can you talk about how you maintain that or how you got in there?
Yeah, there's short answer therapy.
Therapy?
No, but I think this was what I learned in my MBA program at the start. On like day one during orientation, they have you take this very detailed personality test and say, this is what you're good at. These are the gaps in your performance/personality. These are the ones you can fix. And here's an elective for that gap. These are the things you're, better off not bothering about. Focus on your strengths, combine them with skills that you can easily pick up. And through that self-awareness comes better understanding of what you can do and you can't do. And so when I decided to set up the property management business, it was a very deliberate move. And it really put everything in focus as to what kind of business do I want to do, what my constraints are, what my preferences are in terms of my lifestyle, and how busy I want to be and how much time I want to be able to have with my family. There are all these different considerations. And the fact that I went through that exercise shows in the early success that the business has had and how, I'm enjoying all of it. So yeah, that planning upfront really makes a huge difference. And that only comes when you're self-aware as to what you know and what you don't know.
Yeah. Did you also experience, I understand like a lot of people think there is no real failure out there. There's only education and lessons if you choose to learn from it.
Sure.
But are you still experiencing failures, and how many failures what are some big failures experienced along the way of getting to know yourself?
Yeah. In my first tech startup, I really didn't know what I was doing. And I raised some friends and family funding, which we ended up running out of money at some point and we had to cease operations. It was an international property management company. So it was helping Indians who live here manage their properties in India. And it had a concierge aspect to it, which was unique. So if it's an empty property, if it's a tenant in there, but even if it's your parents who live there, we can help them manage the property. But I didn't know much about the product market fit and all of those things. I was in my late 20s. So that was a failure. I also realized in that venture that you only push yourself what is the bare minimum you need to push yourself. Most people will only do what the bare minimum is. Now, I lived at home in a joint family. I didn't have any big burn rate. I wasn't burning money just existing, which I do here because it's my household here, and not living at a home which is like a family's home is paid for. So I realized that if I'm going to do businesses, I need to burn bridges and have everything on the line. And I perform much better under that pressure.
What do you mean burn bridges?
So I do not have an option to go back home.
Okay.
And that's not because my parents told me. That's an option I've cut off for myself.
Sure.
Because I know that if I can go back and go join dad's business, what am I really having at stake? And will that make me work just as hard? And I see this a lot with people around me. If they're experimenting on a business while nothing's really at stake, then they're less likely to succeed at it.
I like that perspective.
Yeah.
You're not burning bridges per se of relationships. You're just burning the bridge of the opportunity for yourself to go back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is no option for me to go join my parents' business. I mean, now they've sold it. So there really isn't an option. Even the day I quit Amazon, I quit before I got my investor visa. Because the minute I get an investor visa, the work visa is canceled. So I cannot be employed. So if I had said, okay, let me start a business on the side and then quit Amazon at the right time versus I'm all in. If I don't get the visa, I have to leave the country. That's the kind of bridge I was talking about.
Lot on the line.
Lot on the line, yeah. And that may not work for everybody. I know that's how I'm wired and it works well for me. And so that's what I choose to do whenever I go into something new is go all in.
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed about you is like,
yeah.
And I want to get back to going all in. But first I want to talk about this international property management business.
Yeah.
You're in your younger 20s. You're all in, I'm guessing. You've had people in with you.
Yeah.
And you said it failed and you had people investing. Can you
Yeah.
kind of walk us through a little bit more of that experience? Because coming from the space of, wow, we start something and none of us want it to fail, let alone like But in this day and age, it's common to
Yeah.
obtain resources from the people that know us, love us, trust us, believe in us. And then it's just like, once you have that, and it's like,
Yeah.
tell me about this journey and how it felt and some of how those relationships turned out afterwards.
Yeah, it was a bloody nose for sure. And the relationship didn't suffer.
Good.
With my family, the understanding is, in India, a lot of families, they will not be hard on their kids, saying, oh, all this is yours one day anyways. So live a comfortable life. And my parents, for them, it's like, this is all yours one day, but it's not going to come to you just by default. So you still have to work out your own life path and business plan and whatever you want to, you can't be waiting for us to give you the money one day.
Yeah.
So when I got that funding from my parents, it was an advance on what I would get eventually.
Sure.
So if I burn that money, then that's whenever they split their assets between us kids and whatever they do, I don't even know if they will or how much they will, it's going to be less by that much amount because I already draw upon it, right?
Yeah.
So it didn't spoil anything, but I was kind of dipping into my eventual retirement, inheritance, whatever comes, and if it comes. So.
And they knew you well enough. It's not like it's not like you were promising the world. You're
No.
promising an idea that you were going to try.
Yeah, and that has made me a lot more responsible with my future companies. I made sure that the business models did not require funding of that sort. So since then, I've never invested anybody else's money in my businesses. It's either been very low capital or I've invested my own personal money that I've earned and saved. So,
Wow.
So PMI ARCA is, I put up the money myself. I don't have an ounce of funding from anybody else.
And we're going to get into more of that later.
Yeah.
So you're listening to Made of More on KKNW 1150 AM. And I've been interviewing here Aditya Mehta, and I'm Chris Herdman, your host. We'll be back after these messages.
I'm Chris Jakomick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakomick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diaspora, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diaspora offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diaspora Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
Alternative Talk, 1150 on AM, 98.9 HD3 on HD, 1150kknw.com on the web.
Welcome back to Made of More. I'm your host, Christopher Erdman, and I'm sitting here with Aditya Mehta from ARCA Property Management and the podcast Diaspora. So we were just talking about his early beginnings and talking about setbacks and failures. And during the break, I just realized I want to know more about how Adi has some stories about setbacks versus failures.
Yeah, so I guess there's a 2-part story. One was that during the time I was running my third company, I wanted to move back to the US. We spent a whole year applying for a visa so that I could move into my subsidiary here. And after a lot of time and money, the visa got rejected. It was just a tough time immigration wise. This is 2017. And so I said, now what do I do with this? And how do I turn this into an opportunity? And whenever I have a major setback in life, I decide on a time frame that I'm going to mope about it and then come out with a clear head and figure out what the next plan is. So when this visa thing happened, I told my wife, don't talk to me for a week. I'm going to mope around. I'm going to say, why me? All these things that it's human nature to say. And then we'll figure out what to do next. And then that's how we landed up in Vancouver, Canada instead. And that move turned out to be a great move in hindsight. Similarly, during COVID, my son was 2 months old. We had gone to India so that he could meet our extended family. I had a new job and I came back very quickly because my new job wanted me to resume work. And when I come back, within a 2-week period, I'm laid off. There's a lockdown, and my family's stuck in India for what was eventually going to be 6 months.
How'd that make you feel?
So I took a week to mope around, and I'd never been laid off in my life. It was relatively inexperienced startup founders. They got spooked by the uncertainty. I was the most expensive resource they had apart from them. So I see why they did it. So I took some time to mope around for being laid off, figured out what am I going to do lockdown wise from not going crazy perspective, from financial, because now I have this downtown apartment which I'm renting, which is now too big and I'm not earning. So figure out plans for all that. But what came out of that was my fourth company, which is also called Diaspora. It was a platform to help new immigrants in Canada settle down and assimilate better. And it eventually grew to about 5,000 members. We did over 150 meetups and events. Someone actually found their future spouse at one of my meetups.
Wow.
And there's lots of people who use the network to get jobs, make friends. So I guess I collected a lot of positive karma out of it. So whenever I have this setback in my life of any kind, I take some time to process it, and then I say, what's the opportunity that this presents that we can come back better and stronger? And that formula has kind of worked well for me since then.
I love that. Yeah. You're allowing failures, setbacks you're allowing time for that to set in and for you to process that. I think that's really important. A lot of people feel like they need to brush their knees off really quick. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that and then keep going. But what I'm listening to you is like, just like any other human being, you're gonna experience those moments, but you're allowing time to feel it and reflect on it.
Yeah, it gives you closure.
Yeah.
Now this is done. I got laid off. Boo-hoo. Now let's get over it. Let's move forward in a positive direction. So that downtime is really, and you can do whatever makes you happy. You could go get drunk. You could go for a solo trip.
Sure.
Right? You could just sit around in bed watching Netflix all day. It's individual. What works for you to get over the pain of that setback.
Where'd you learn this from?
I had been doing it for a while. I didn't know I was doing it. I just learned how to articulate it recently.
Yeah.
It just comes naturally to me. I don't know. I'm a very tenacious person. I don't give up on my goals that easily. I think I heard Jeff Bezos say this, but I have strong opinions held weakly. So it means that I really believe in what I'm doing. But if presented adequate data as to why that's not the right approach, I'm quick to realign. So whenever these setbacks happen, I will take that time and ask myself, am I still on the right path? If not, I quickly pivot. And if I think it is still the right path, which it was in these two cases I described, I just kept going.
Just kept going.
Yeah, kept going.
Good for you. That's something I've noticed about you, and I really appreciate all these things that you've been talking about. Another thing that I'm consistently wowed by and I want to get into deeper is like systems and micro habits. Like you're a man that I watch in our business group and other areas that I get to like get a peek in the window, and it's like this man has got systems down to a T, what it looks like on the outside. And it seems like you have you call them micro habits. I was just calling them habits, but tell me more about your systems and micro habits.
Yeah, so I have an overactive mind, and I have two goals of these systems and processes. One is to declutter your mind by removing decision fatigue from your day to day. So if I have a system that I put my clothes out for the next day tonight, instead of figuring out what to wear, my morning becomes that much on autopilot, and I'm wasting less time in the morning, which is the most productive time of the day for me, taking decisions which in the grand scheme of things don't really matter. The other thing is that it brings about a sustainable consistency, and that is what leads to exponential personal development. For example, I wanted to lose 25 pounds in 2021, and all I did was a little bit of diet control and 10 minutes of yoga every day, 10 minutes of meditation every day. Now, the goal is not to do a lot of yoga. The goal is to make sure you do the yoga every day.
Sure.
And this could be, 5 minutes of learning Spanish.
Which you do quite a bit.
I haven't missed my daily lesson in 1700 days because the goal is only 5 minutes. So what happens is the days that you are in the mood for it, you'll do 15. But the days you're not in the mood for it, because the goal is only 5 minutes, you're more likely to push yourself to just get it done. But if my goal was 30 minutes, on the days I don't feel like doing it, which happens, 2 out of every 7 days, those days you will end up not doing anything. But now you're doing at least 5 minutes.
Sure.
Think of an example like going for a walk. The micro habit is putting on your gym shoes and not going on the walk. Because if you put on your shoes, you're going to go out the door. If you go out the door, you're going to walk some 5 minutes. And that's still better than not walking. And it's this consistency which really gets you the results in the long run and not the quantum of the walking that you do. And I've just applied that over and over again in every part of my life. I have 20 something micro habits, and I make sure that these habits are extremely accessible. So the gym shoes are waiting there in the morning, right? I'm not even having to go look for socks. If it also works on the negative side, where if you want to get rid of a bad habit, like, you want to stop snacking so much,
Sure.
you just remove all the snacks from your house because now you've made it harder to access. Will you still go out and buy snacks sometimes? Yes. But most days, when you would have just grabbed for that packet of chips, you don't. So you're bringing about a lot of behavioral changes by making things accessible or inaccessible, and bringing about behavioral changes by having very small targets, 5 minutes a day, 10 push-ups after every meeting. I'm not saying I'm going to go to the gym every day. I'm saying I'm doing 10 push-ups after every call that I have. Now I'm doing 50 push-ups a day without really bothering my schedule or making me do any extra effort.
That's fantastic.
And those systems, they declutter my mind. They give me more bandwidth to think about things. I come up with so many process improvements because my mind is free. I'll give you a kind of lighthearted example. We hang hangers a certain way in my closet. They all point in one direction. And I noticed that when I pull a jacket off, the hanger falls. So I turned it around and that worked. So I told my wife that we have a process change in the house now. The hanger is going to be hung this way. And she was like, who thinks about stuff like this? Like, why are you analyzing how the hanger... I'm like, you'll thank me when you're 60 years old and you're not bending down to pick up these hangers that keep falling. So because I have automated / processized so many things in my life, people think it's like, oh, you're like a robot. Like, no, I'm actually freeing up my mind to make actual decisions and think about real things that matter, and not, what shoes go with these jeans. Because I already thought about all that when I was at a more relaxed state of mind. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. And it seems more simple than it.
It's simple. It's not easy, because the discipline is what is really hard to nail down. And I found the solution to that. When you're focused on results, you're going to be disappointed. Because these are small changes, right? So they take time to show results. But when they do, those results are sustainable and long lasting. So when you have the focus is on the enjoying the process and the identity of being someone who has a routine, then one day you just notice that those pants fit better, or you just had a conversation in Spanish and you didn't even realize it. And then that becomes the big motivator that, oh, I didn't even realize I've already lost 4 pounds. Now I really want to keep going. Versus checking my weight every day in the first 2 weeks and saying, man, why haven't I lost anything so far? So that conditioning has been as important as the act of doing the habit itself.
Wow. Thanks for sharing. Do you have any piece of advice for people that are curious about how to start micro habits in their life?
Yeah, you stack them together. So I will do my meditation immediately, followed by the yoga, immediately followed by the 5-minute Spanish, immediately followed by whatever else I want to stack to that. And so then what happens is once you go into that flow, then you'll start doing all of them. And like I said, make it as easy and accessible. I want to take a vitamin every morning. The vitamins are kept in where my clothes are kept, because that's a trigger. Because I know I'm definitely putting on clothes in the morning.
Sure.
And so I linked it with that so that I never forget to take my vitamins, because I never forget to put my clothes on. So when you make it very accessible and when you stack these things together, you're much more likely to do all of them. Now, the downside is if I'm traveling and I haven't put my clothes out the previous night, I'm going to forget my vitamins too.
Sure.
But over time, like I've been doing this for more than 10 years now, you work your way,
You work your way through it. And this is how, when you show up to our business group and you're getting all these new tasks done, is you're probably creating micro habits around these new things you stepped up to.
Yeah, so I recently stepped in as the secretary of our business group, and that was a very last minute kind of thing I had to do because someone left the chapter. So I was like, how do I make sure I don't forget to send the Tuesday reminders? And now on Tuesdays, I'm like, what's my anchor on Tuesday that I never ever forget? And it's this particular news website that I read. So I stack that habit with that. So as soon as I read the news, I send those emails.
I tell you what, after I get out of here, I'm going to start stacking some micro habits.
Yeah.
I can look back and I'm already doing it.
Yeah.
Just not as intentionally and without knowing I was. And so I'm just going to, I'm going to take some of your ideas and just kind of figure out how can I fit this into my life.
Yeah. I have a morning stack, a post lunch stack, and an evening stack of things.
There you go.
Yeah. And sometimes I do them, like I give myself the freedom to do it in the evening, if not in the morning. They can be plugged into that stack, but there has to be a stack to plug into.
I think we could have a whole podcast just on micro habits, at least a few shows.
There's a book called The Atomic Habits,
which
is a very well-known book by Jim Clear. That book was a game changer.
Okay.
To get a system on how to make your system.
So you heard it here. If Adi thinks this book is good, I encourage you guys to go listen to that.
I've gifted it to probably 20 people by now.
All right.
It's such a good book, yeah.
It might actually be in my lineup in my Amazon. I want to take a step back, you had your visa set for the U.S., and then it didn't come through. You moped around for a week.
Sure.
And then tell me how you came up with Canada and why.
Yeah, I was moving for quality of life. I did my undergrad in the US. So I picked up a lot of American habits at a younger age. Most people from India come here to do their masters, and they're older by 4 years. Personality is better formed, I guess. So they're less receptive to changing themselves based on their time here. And it's also just a 2-year program. Mine was 4 years. So I missed this part of the world a lot. And I had a lot of habits I acquired which were kind of misfitted in India when I went back.
Like what?
Needing personal space. India is a high context collective culture. There is no concept of personal space. So when I say, I just need space, people are like, why do you need space? What is personal space? So I knew I would be more at peace in this part of the world. I also found that I was better suited to the challenges of this part of the world. So I wanted to come back. I really missed the quality of life. In India, you can have a high standard of living, which I did, but quality of life is the simple things like, is there a park nearby? Is the air clean? Can you just sit around on a beach, do nothing, right? Like, it's just a very different experience there. So I said, well, if US won't take me, then let me try Canada. It's also an English-speaking country where, Indians are generally welcome and there's opportunities. It's a developed economy. Vancouver's probably better than any American city when it comes to quality of life.
It's one of my favorites in the world.
Yeah, it's got the personality of a yoga instructor. And so we applied and we got our permanent residency in like 3 weeks versus a year to get a visa here, which was rejected. So we said,
how many weeks?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
So they have a very pragmatic point system. So, you and your spouse, no dependents, working age, good English, master's degrees, work experience. Yeah, come on over. But if you're a 70-year-old who wants to come there just to be with their kids, you got to wait for 2 years because, you're going to be a dependent. You're going to be a drain on the resources of the country. So we got through very quickly, and we pretty much just showed up in Vancouver. And then eventually, we're very well settled there. I ended up joining Amazon, and they brought me to Seattle. Otherwise, I had laid my US plans to rest. That we're giving up on this dream, and Canada is more than making up for it right now. So we'll be here for the time being. But then my friends say in my past life I was a white American man because I love barbecue and football and baseball. I have very American habits that way.
Yeah.
So fate got me back here.
Faith got you back here.
Yeah.
I love that you said that. I just have to say, you moped around for a week, then you decided to come you're here basically 4 weeks later. That's
pretty much.
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah, so 4 weeks later, we had an alternative path as to what we were going to do. It was more about leaving India than going to Canada. So I could have prepared better for what we will do once we move to Canada. But then things sorted themselves out eventually, and it worked out. And by virtue of the fact that I'm a Canadian citizen now, my move to entrepreneurship right now became easier because Canadians have access to an investor visa that Indians don't. So it all worked out in the end regardless.
It all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
All right. So you're listening to the show Made of More. I'm your host, Chris Erdman, sitting here with Aditya Mehta, and you've been listening to his more recent experiences. And we'll be back after these messages.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. Being a veteran, it's interwoven into your DNA. It is really the absence of the connection and the purpose that can really drive a lot of veterans to some negative thoughts. For those who are in a suicidal crisis, the window of time to save somebody's life is very short. Our duty is to protect ourselves and protect our families. And one way you can do that is store your weapons safely. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdman. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
Alternative Talk 1150, the talk of the sound.
Welcome back to the show Made of More. I'm your host, Chris Erdman. I'm sitting here with Aditya Mehta, and we've been talking about his business journey and getting back into, you made it to Canada on the visa and you were working at Amazon. Now you're here. Can you tell us about?
So Amazon was my first corporate role. I'd never worked for a large company before, except my family business. And my job was to launch new warehouses. So take warehouses from pieces of land to ready-made buildings. I did about more than 25 of those in Canada.
Sure.
I got promoted and got brought to Seattle. And just about the time I moved, my job disappeared because the Amazon decided they don't want to launch any more warehouses. I mean, they did like 400 of them through the COVID time. So now my visa is tied to my employment. So if I get laid off, I have 60 days to leave the country. And because my wife is my dependent, she can't live in the US either. Sure. My son can't be in school. You're signing a 1-year lease for a property to live in when your own tenure could be cut short into 60 days at any time, right? So it was that constant sword hanging on your head that tomorrow I could have to leave the country.
Sure.
So I didn't want to do that beyond a point. The work had stopped being as engaging as it used to be because just being moved from team to team, I probably went through 9 different roles in 18 months. And that kind of uncertainty just started, not being good for your mental health, your stress, everything. So
a lot of stress there.
Yeah. So in 2023, I took the summer off from there and I went through a structured decision process as to what do I do next. A few times in life, you get to sit and think about the next pivot you want to do. So I said, let's make the most of the opportunity. So I laid out all the different scenarios I could have from here on. For example, change teams within Amazon, move back to Canada and continue working for Amazon, move back to Canada and work somewhere else, move back to Canada and do a business. The same set of combinations for the US and for Middle East because I have a big network in Dubai, or I go back to India. And then I laid out the immigration impact, the finance impact on my son's school, impact on my wife's business for all these scenarios, and started eliminating scenarios based on that. And then I concluded that I wanted to go back to being an entrepreneur, but I wanted to stay in the US for a variety of reasons. So at the end of the first month of the summer long leave of absence, I concluded I want to be a business person in the US.
Okay.
I said, now what do I want to do business in? And again, I went through my preferred choice of industries, capital constraints, nature of revenue, nature of the clients. I wanted an industry with a low bar, like, a boring business I could excel in, something that I could have some hand-holding in learning the business. So franchising made sense. Franchising also made sense from a visa perspective. So then I started drawing up all these synergies of the eventual business I want to do. And by the end of the second month, I had concluded I wanted to be in property management. I mean, nobody likes a property manager. It's not an industry known for excellence and leading use of tech and innovation.
It's almost a thankless job.
It's an extremely thankless job. No one's going to tell their property manager, thank you for your service, right?
On either side.
On either side. And I think there was a lot of value to be added because this is a tenant friendly state and because this is a tech centric city where people appreciate tech. I thought it was a good fit. And then in the third month, I went out and interviewed 10 different franchise companies and then concluded on PMI as my partner. I've completed my visa application and then went back to work to Amazon for a month and a half. And then the day of the visa appointment in Toronto to transition to investor visa was my last day at Amazon because I could not have an investor visa and be employed in the US at the same time. And we could not be out of status even for a day because then technically my son is not supposed to be in school. My wife cannot be owning a business. Like there was a lot of complexity around it. So we left on the Amazon work visa and we re-entered as investor visas. And it was just time to perfection. And because I took so much time at the start to go through this whole process, and I've shared that document template with many people who are going through their own process of transitioning from like a job to a business.
Is this something you made or something you picked up in your master's degree?
No, I used Amazon's famous or infamous white paper concept where in 6 pages you have to lay out the whole idea from the current state to the eventual state. So I went through that exercise of, doing business in US. Then I laid out a Gantt chart. So these are all the things that need to happen in this sequence. These are the dependencies. And I laid out financials. So from the time now to the time my new business starts earning revenue, how am I going to tide it over financially? What do I need to compromise on? What do I need to do more of to augment that income when I don't have a salary? So it was a really thorough exercise and it really helped in getting me off the ground quicker. I think for PMI, nobody's gone from agreement sign to business launch in 6 months with a visa in the middle. It was the fastest anybody's ever got their business operational.
Sounds really fast.
Yeah, and because I planned all this, I knew what I was getting into. I knew what was required of me. The goal they gave me for the first 6 months was to get to 20 properties under management. I got to 44.
In what amount of time?
6 months.
6 months. Oh.
And then I again did what I learned at Amazon, which is I turned off my marketing and I said, let's take all the lessons we learned in this busy season and improve our processes. And I used that downtime to get my staff trained, lay down processes, improve all my documents, my leases. And then early this year, I again turned it on and now we're growing again. I'm almost at 60 properties now.
Congrats.
Yeah.
How's it feel?
It feels good. It's all my validations. All my assumptions were validated about life here, how business is here, how clients are here, and that belief that I'm better suited to being an entrepreneur in this part of the world versus in India, because that requires a very different temperament. That's been validated as well. So usually I would get bored with whatever my venture is around this time, year and a half in, but I'm enjoying myself and the company's growing. And the most important thing is that I replaced my Amazon salary in the 5th month itself. So that was the first big peace of mind that, at a family level, we are making enough cash flow. And the happy side effect was that looking at my business grow so quickly, my wife became motivated in her business to grow and compete with me.
Sure. What does she do?
She's a pharmaceutical consultant.
Okay.
And she has a couple of interesting avenues that she's exploring in her side of the business, which I sometimes help her to build that model. But so her revenue exploded too. So we had a double whammy in that sense where our family income is now twice of what it used to be, just by virtue of taking that risk and pushing each other.
I love
to
that.
do better. Yeah.
Yeah, you're touching on something I'm always curious about, and I think it's a really important subject, is like, as a married person, how much impact does your spouse have on your business?
In terms of influence on business decisions, we run our businesses independently. But in terms of risk-taking ability, the fact that you have a partner and her visa depends on you. So, one of our businesses is more critical to our time in the country. If her business fails, she can start up a new one. If mine fails, we have to leave the country. So
it's not very much pressure, is it?
No. So not just being married, but having children, right? Those things then alter your risk profile and your ability to take risk and the way you make your decisions. For example, if I didn't have 4-year-old when I was deciding to do a business, Canada would have been a much stronger option for me to move back. But I wanted to give consistency to my child, so that weighed in on my decision to continue to live here. So in that sense, it does impact what your family status is, but she doesn't, as such, like tell me what to do in mine or vice versa. We actually have a weekly business review. We've been slacking off on that a little bit, but we did it consistently for many months. And every Friday, we would sit and talk about her business and my business. We would share key metrics and let each other know what support we need from each other. And then also go into a bit of like house administration. But that weekly structured meeting and time set aside when nobody's on a phone, no one's distracted, it did wonders in keeping us both updated on each other's businesses and thereby having that peace of mind that, okay, we're both on the track that we set out to be on. So it might be found absurd to have a business review with your spouse, but our house is a organization. It runs. It has to have certain things being done at certain times. Our businesses are dependent on the support we get from each other. So, for example, she might say, I have this travel coming up in early April, so make sure, you're around so that you can be with our son. So, okay, point noted. And then by the end of it, we're talking about, oh, did you buy that birthday present for that kid? So it goes into house administration as well, but keeps our house and our business and therefore our life running smoothly.
Well, I think a lot of couples could probably learn from that. How detailed is this business meeting?
At the start, it used to be 3 hours every week. We had so much to discuss and we were
catching up.
You're catching up. And then because we have a minutes of the meeting, like a Google Doc, where we would both put in things we wanted to talk about. And if something was an action point, it would get carried over to the next meeting. So then it became quite streamlined and we could be done in an hour or so. But it was very meaty discussion, very useful discussion. There's no room for random talk, your usual husband-wife discussion, argument, none of that. It's you're serious, you're in business frame of mind. And for my wife, that's more of an effort because she's a different person at work and at home. I'm the same person everywhere. She used to call me being too corporate at home, but I don't have a different side to my personality. I'm like obsessive and organized at home and at the workplace. So yeah.
I like that about you. You're consistent everywhere.
Sure.
Where you show up in our business group, it's the same person showing up here today.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So after you got your first 40 homes and you got 60 homes,
almost 60, yeah.
Yeah. Where are you at today?
I think the 60th contract is out for signing, if I'm not mistaken.
Congratulations.
So I think I'm the largest PMI residential franchise in Seattle, despite being the newest one. There's a couple that focus on like the HOA management side of things, and then the rest are competitors, but in different parts of the city. I could say I lucked out, but it was also deliberate that this is a great market for property management. The rents are high, the quality of tenants is very good because you have all these corporate employees. The properties are beautiful, and you have tenant-friendly laws, so your value added is more to the client. And like I said, they appreciate tech.
Yeah.
So it turned out to be almost an ideal market. I've not had to do a single eviction. My late fees collected last year was $10. So it's a very easy market to operate in. Of course, different set of challenges in terms of you're dealing with very educated, highly qualified, well-to-do people, both on the tenant side and the property owner side. But then that's where my corporate temperament also is an asset. So
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So it all worked out very well.
Sounds like it. Tell me a little bit about who your target client is in your area and your target client.
I have the ability to manage properties in all of the state of Washington. I prefer King County and a bit of Snohomish County. I have clients from Everett to Olympia, and these are all residential properties of 4 units or less. Mm-hmm. So no big apartment buildings at this time.
Mm-hmm. Do you want the big apartments?
I am set up to do them. Operationally, I'm set up. Mm-hmm. I just haven't, given that my team is very lean, I haven't taken on any business that I am not fully confident of being able to serve with the usual standards. But it's a matter of time before I get there. And the ideal client is property investors who value somebody competent taking care of their property and don't mind paying for the service. There's a lot of accidental landlords here, And on a investor maturity point of view, they're still getting there because it's their first property that they have a tenant in. So they tend to be too hands-on, or they tend to be financially very sensitive. They'll come and say, why did the handyman charge $140 when my handyman charges $120?
Sure. Micromanaging.
Yeah. So, right now I don't say no to any customer because one, I had excess capacity to service more properties. And two, if it's a bad customer, it's still a learning experience. So I took on all sorts of clients, even when I knew I should not touch this person from a mile away because our business values don't align. But I still took them on so that I could learn what kind of clients I don't want.
Right. Get your hands dirty a bit.
Yeah. And now I've been more selective. I've been refusing business if it doesn't fit either my business values or what the expectations the client has from me. But the investor clients are usually the easiest to work with because then they let you do your job.
Tell me, what is an accidental?
It's someone who wants to sell the property but is not able to sell it because of market conditions and ends up having to rent it out more out of necessity than by choice. An investor is purposely buying a property to put it on rent. This is a person who, let's say they bought a bigger house, they moved to the bigger house, but they couldn't sell the old one. So now they have to rent it out. So their temperament is different. Their ability to take risk is different because now they have two mortgages. So if the property sits empty for 2 months, they can't afford it. And that drives a lot of their considerations versus an investor who's in it for the long run.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So there's people who didn't intend to be landlords but are because of market situations.
So what type of rental terms do you do in your business? Do you mess with short-term, mid-term, long-term?
I do long-term rentals, and then I have a mid-term rental that I have taken purely as an experiment, and it actually did quite well. I don't do short-term rentals because they're operationally very heavy. You're having, cleaning done every 2 days. You're 24/7 on live chat. So I just haven't been venturing into that part of the business. But, it's a huge market. Even without adding these other verticals, there's so much to do. There's probably 1 million housing units and a large percentage of those are rentals. And the biggest property management company probably has 2,000 doors. So nobody's really dominating the market per se. And there's lots of room for everybody to grow. So not in a big rush to add these other pillars anytime soon, at least.
All right. What else would you like the listeners to know about your business and how to find you?
I'm on every social media platform out there. You can look for the podcast, which is Diaspora, with an extra A at the end so that I got the website name. And the company is called PMI for Property Management Incorporated. PMI ARKA, ARKA. It's a Sanskrit word, which means ray of light. Mm-hmm. And so it's just PMIARKA.com. And even if someone doesn't necessarily have a need but just wants some advice on their rental and their tenants, I'm always happy to help out.
Yeah, I would feel comfortable sending clients over you just to talk. Anybody that is trying to master micro habits and having these types of meetings in the household, what great examples you are for the children and for anybody else listening in on.
Yep.
I think you're a testament for somebody of systems and reliability. Everywhere you show up, you're the same in my eyes. And I think I would feel safe in just introducing you to anybody that's interested in getting something property managed.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the consistency was done more out of self-preservation than anything else. So I don't go crazy. But now it's just become its own beast, and it's just helping me just be a better person day in and day out. So
yeah. Well, that's easy to see that you're trying to be a better person day in and day out. I'm going to have to ask you for a copy of that white paper sometime as well.
Yeah.
Adi, I just want to say thank you for being a part of our show, Made of More. It's easy to see that throughout your life that you've been working on becoming more the whole way through. Yeah. And you've been listening to myself, Chris Erdman, and Aditya Mehta, and now you know how to find them. So
thanks for having me.
Thank you. This is KKNW 1150 AM and the show Made of More. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Made of More on KKNW. Whether you're on the road, at the office, or listening from home, Keep chasing what lights you up, keep building what matters, and never settle for less than the life you were made for. You are made of more. More purpose, more impact, more joy. Made of More is part of the Staying Power network of shows and podcasts, all of which that are dedicated to inspiring listeners to build lives of meaning, connection, and value. You can find the Staying Power network of shows, including Made of More, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us on YouTube. Until next Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I'm Chris Erdman. Stay bold, stay inspired, and stay made of more.